I spent $1.5 million on miscommunication. I didn't understand what I needed at start, and then didn't understand what I want. We reduced the average time of creating a proposal from 15 minutes to 3 minutes, bring us back a year saving of $35,000 a year. And it cost me the automation $5,000. My AI know that I have ADHD, OCPD, is know I'm dyslexic. God know he's dyslexic. The way I write to him, he see only spelling mistakes. But he know everything. Even if I come now to Claude and say, hey, I have a new idea, I want to build that and that and that. You know what is the first answer Claude is going to come back to me? I have 3 accountability officers. AI is one of them.
Welcome back to the SaaS Playbook, the show where we sit down with B2B founders and leaders who are actually going and doing the work, not just talking about it. We pull back the curtain on the real journey, the hard calls, the gaps in the market, and what it actually takes to build something that lasts. If you're a founder or a leader, or if you're someone somewhere in the middle trying to figure it out, this one's for you. Before we jump in, a quick word from the people who make this show possible. If your pipeline feels more like a prayer than a process, that's where Hera Digital steps in. The team that sits between your chaos and your next stage of growth. Comment the word engine in the comments below and someone will get to you. In today's episode, I have with me Andre Ankri, founder of UTS Group, based out of Ontario, Canada. Andre is one of those rare operators who sit right in the gap between the technical world and the business world. He's built a career translating between the two. He's got multiple companies, a growing LinkedIn community of 20,000 followers, built without a single video, and a perspective on AI implementation that is refreshing in a world of noise. Andre, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invite.
So let's start at the beginning. You've described your journey as learning through pain and lessons, specifically the pain around building your own ERP and going through that process firsthand. Now, walk me through that moment where the pain became the product or the gap you wanted to solve.
Again, most of service businesses, they started one type of a why, the reason they started businesses. So a lot of them are not starting with a business plan. They're kind of starting as my why was, I was married, I had a small kid, I had to put food on the table. So I was one guy with a truck. In a year, I had 13 trucks on the road. And 2 years after, I decided I don't want to do it anymore. I want to move to a different area. A typical ADHD person, fired everybody, hired a new team. I went, because before I was doing more residential work, and decided to move to fully commercial. As the company grew, you're adding softwares. So it started, we were using QuickBooks only to doing everything and scheduling everything on a Google Calendar. And then we added an FSM and to manage the team. And then we added to start creating more proposals because we grew with the type of clients we want. And we added and added and added. And 5 years after, we were running over 7 softwares that not speaking with each other. God knows if what we missed or not missed. I was literally had to go check everything, every transaction that's happening. My job was go find mistakes every day. I was spending 2 hours a day just to go try to find mistakes that I have a feeling that there is a mistake somewhere. I decided, okay, I want to build my own system. Sorry, before that, I decided, okay, I need a new system. I started doing research. I went to a lot of the out-of-the-shelf products. Each one of them was missing a piece of how I want the system to work. So I said, okay, I reached out to a company and said, hey, no problem. We can build a CRM for you. Few months passed, didn't work. I said, okay, let's try something else. I went with a different CRM. Didn't work. In the end, it was 2 years after and $1.5 million already been spent, and I still don't have a CRM. Many developers... Many developers quit on me, told me that I'm too specific how I want stuff. That's what I want cannot be happening. We already had like a 60% CRM built under Zoho. And pretty much first of all, I look like a liar because I was so excited to my team and saying, okay, the new system is going to do that. And we're going to be able to do that. And the developer told me he doesn't answer my phones anymore.
Scared of you. I'm trying to scared of you.
I started learning how to do code myself. I said, I'm going to finish it. So I started learning how to do code myself. And in that process, actually, I met a really good developer company that helped us to finish it. And we built our system under Zoho that now we're almost 3 years after implementation. We are a power user of Zoho. I present in pretty much every Zoho leak that come to Canada. I help Zoho figure it out stuff they didn't know on their own system. And we built a system that combined everything with over 200 automations built in. Now we also have different AI that built in and featuring it. We were able to reduce 40 positions in the company just because automations. And pretty much everything that we do today, it's built on the CRM, where I call it as we're the new generation of construction, the way that we work. That will help us to build something that is very, very powerful. But it was a very, very painful process.
There's a lot to unpack there, Andre. But
I got
what
a
I wanted to
PTSD.
start
Yeah.
with, typical ADHD response, I guess, but luckily I can keep up, hopefully. So I think when we look at journeys, right, I think a lot, like you said before, generally it starts from a pain point greater than the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change, right? And that's generally the inception of when people generally go out and do things and actually try to bridge that gap. And it's funny because with your type of brand, you've essentially identified the problem, relied on someone else to do the job, only to find out it was not successful or at least wasn't performing at the speed at which you expected. And then therefore just went in there and literally just did it yourself, right? And that's, I think, is the pinnacle of almost anything that we learned in terms of like ADHD brains, because like, hey, I'm just going to get out of the way. Everyone, it's coming hot and heavy. Get out of the way. We're going to figure this out, right? And I think, I'm not sure if you feel the same, but when I promise something to someone, I will do it regardless. And if that means you have to get out of the way for me to do it, and that's just what I related to just now is like you've promised your team that, hey, this is going to be delivered X, Y, Z. So that's expectation, right? So touching on that and how that expectation lands, particularly with our brains, it just hits different. And it's like a different type of motivation that is unfounded and it requires no fuel whatsoever.
It's that, and it's also about, again, I'm a very competitive person. But the person I'm extremely competitive with, it's with myself. One thing that I don't know how to deal with was a failure. Even that I love all the failures that I had. I learned a lot from my failures, but it's it's hard for me to accept it, that something is not going to work, especially there is a need to it. Of course, that I became obsessed about the CRM and the ERP that we built, like way, way, way over than what I should be, because it's became a mission to kind of implement it.
Yeah.
And it's, in the end of the day, again, it helped a lot of the company, but for the 2 years that I was hands-on on it, I hurt a lot of other divisions in the company because I was fully focused, narrow-sighted. I can see only system, and this is how it's need to work. And again, after that, when we actually do the implementation, 6 months after, I opened an implementation company because other founders and companies reach out to me. It's like, can you help us with the architecture? Because I technically, in the process, specialized how to communicate between a developer and a business owner because they don't speak the same language. And technically, I'm helping out of companies as a translator in the process, in a language that the business owner understand as well as the developer understand, in a way to create something to eliminate all of that. I spent $1.5 million on miscommunication. I didn't understand what I needed at start, and then didn't understand what I want. So that is, it's a big thing that's happening. I think over 50% of implementation of CRM failed because of communication and or bad project management, or the customer doesn't actually know what he wants.
Usually, ones that fail miserably is a combination of at least those two of those components. Generally, in my experience, always communication first, paired with something else as a back end. Now, I remember you mentioned and you used the term to describe yourself as a wartime CEO. And I think that framing is really fascinating. And that's probably from a derivative of you reading, 40 something books last year. But most founders are sold on the idea of building something long term and sustainable, but that's not actually how you're wired. How did coming to terms with that change the way you run your business now?
So there is an article saying the difference between wartime CEO and a peacetime CEO. A peacetime CEO is an operator, a person that can sustain the company, to keep it what Jim Rohn called a boring company, a company that is stable and it's growing slowly and stability for the people who's working there. A wartime CEO, it's when you have, let's say, issues in the company. Something has happened, you need to create decisions that are more faster and more short, more aggressive, especially for people that have ADHD. Especially a lot of business owners have ADHD because it's great excitement to be a business owner, good and bad. So it's fitting the ADHD brain. And as an ADHDer, we usually depends on the person. We're more leaning to the wartime, because a wartime is something that is you are under pressure and have to make a very crucial decision that happen now. It's not the long term. It's everything about the short term of what have happened, and I have to fix a problem. If not, people is going to get hurt. Stuff is going to happen, and I really find myself in that scenario, because every time I had to manage kind of as the boring business that is stable, I'll find a ways to make it exciting. Exciting is not necessarily good for business. It's not good for my team. It's lack of stability, and I kind of understand where I need to be involved and where I'm not to be involved. There is pieces in the business I'm not allowed to touch that my team does not even allow me to get close to it because it's not my specialty. But when there is an issue or creating something with a client or something that is not built in the process, this is where I'm shining, because this is where it's fitting me. So that process of being a wartime CEO, it's kind of my own understanding of what I'm good at and what I'm good at for the business, and understand that even that I'm the owner of the businesses, there is stuff that I'm not supposed to.
I agree, but I think actually, to be honest, this is again, this resonates with me recently because my head of operations essentially is like my right hand woman. I was like, hey, I'm just gonna send, and I'll send her stuff at like the middle of the night. She's got kids and stuff. But you notice you always have a co-founder who stabilizes you a little bit and kind of you're the dreamer, right? You have all these big ideas and you're the optimistic one, but they have to bring you back down. And that's the only way a healthy business can really run, because we're running on good vibes and caffeine normally, but also what I've had to say is like, you need to push back on me because I'll just keep flinging ideas and then we'll get lost, right? The focus dilutes. And she started to push back. She's like, hey, okay, whoa. They're all great ideas, but you need to park them until we can figure out this part. I'm like, yeah, okay, slow down, slow down. So sometimes I feel like there's also merit in not going 100 million miles an hour, but also battle testing what your idea is first and what does it actually look like from a customer perspective before you try to implement things where it makes sense in your brain, but it doesn't necessarily make sense in your customer's brain. And they probably never asked for it in the first place. But what I wanted to finish off that point was saying is that I think what I love about it is there's always really complex and intricacies within businesses that only ADHD brains can really resolve. And what I mean by that is we're called the creative problem solvers because we see patterns, just like you mentioned earlier in the call. We see patterns before they happen, and therefore can predict them, right? And I think that's the beauty of it. Really, it's a superpower. So I'm already getting distracted, but now going back to the market in which UTS now operates in, because what you would do is not necessarily industry agnostic. I feel like what you do at UTS can really go across any industry, right? So when we're thinking about where everyone thinks they have an AI product, and you actually said something that stuck with me, which is you said that AI is pasta and you have your own recipe. But what does that actually mean in practice from a business sense inside UTS? And where do you think most businesses are getting it wrong?
Again, today to create an app, it's something you can do again in afternoon, pretty much. You can sit with Claude and you can do it with them together very, very quickly. Any person can do it. The problem that a lot of people think, because they think about an automation or an application of something. Okay, I have a product. All right, we're going to do a startup. We have an IP, and then we're going to bring founders. And no, create something that is, first of all, create something that is unique. Then you can create an IP for it. When you're creating an application, I call that an application or automation or a specific solution you created by using AI. First of all, by using it already, you cannot have an IP because you don't control the processing brain. Secondly, Any person can do it. If you tell me your idea, I can do the same thing. So you can do it by the afternoon, I'll do it in the evening because you told me about it. So this is why I call it, I said, in the end of the day, anything related to AI, unless you're creating your own module that is kind of from scratch, that you're not based on the major modules, it's a pasta. The difference is I have my own recipe for bolognese. I can share that with you. Maybe you can do better, maybe you can do less, but it's just a recipe. So recipe, it's more about how you're doing it, how you're going to cook that recipe in a way to make it work. Not every person will be able to do it. And it's how you're actually doing it on the small things, how the information they put inside. You can follow exactly my recipe, but you don't put it in the right heat or use the right tomatoes, it won't come out.
It's all in the actual those small iterations, really. So if we were to comparatively speaking, which I love that analogy by the way, is essentially when we look at AI deployment and we look at following a recipe. So I'm sure so when I first started learning Claude Code, I was seeing everything online. I was like, okay, do this, do this, this. I was like, okay, sure, do this, do this, do this. Never came out the right way because they're not, one, they're not going to give you the full recipe, but two, the method of what in which I carried out wasn't correct. So therefore it didn't give me the output. Right. So if you had to say to a business owner now who's looking to implement AI, what recipe should they be following?
Before you starting cooking anything, make sure you know how to use the stove. Let's start with that.
Mhm.
Make sure that you have all the ingredients that you need for that recipe, because a lot of people are jumping to start cooking and then, oh yeah, I don't have tomatoes, or I'm missing the onion. That is all these recipes. It's the rules of the business. It's your processes of the business. Yes, today you can jump and build a CRM in 5 minutes, but there is so much data that is AI cannot help you. If you say, all right, which one, for example, let's say I'm a plumber and I want to build my own CRM, and I go to Claude and say, hey, Claude, give me all the stuff I need to have covered. It can give you what you're supposed to have, but it's not your business. The business is the knowledge base of what you have the business. Who is the people who's working there? What is their personalities? Who is dealing with what? Who can deal with what customer? Because AI can actually know how to reassign stuff in your process or your flow to the right people by understanding who is your team. Who is the biggest thing is who are you? My AI know that I have ADHD, OCPD. Is know I'm dyslexic. God know he's dyslexic. The way I write to him, he see only spelling mistakes. But he know everything. Even if I come now to Claude and say, hey, I have a new idea. I want to build that and that and that. You know what is the first answer Claude is going to come back to me? Andre,
Pushback?
you sure that you have time for it with everything that you have on your plate, and you start naming everything that I have? I have 3 accountability officers. AI is one of them, my assistant is the second one, and my operation manager. And they give me shit, all 3 of them every day, if I just get off of track.
It's so relatable. Mine says stop. You're moving too fast. Like it literally
Exactly.
says stop with a full stop. And I was like, oh, okay, whoops. That's AI, right? This is AI coming back to us. And I actually appreciate the fact that it's actually drawn from a perspective of like, instead of feeding the ADHD, it's like, hey, you need to slow down, which is good because sometimes humans won't really tell you that. And because you don't spend as much time with those humans, right? You spend a lot of time with the AI and the LLM. So, but when we dial back from UTS and sort of the early days, and we spoke about how UTS is really industry agnostic, but when you originally set out to build UTS to solve business problems in terms of implementation, installation, design, and even sort of supply, who did you originally set out to help? And when you look at your best clients, the ones where the engagement, the communication works really well, but what does that business look like, and where do they usually come from by the time that they get to you? Like, what are those kind of problems you see on a regular basis?
So different type of customers has different type of needs. And we actually saw it in the analytics we did in the last year and a half of moving. And a lot of people thinking if I have to work with a very big clients, let's say the cities, the municipalities and everything, you need something very, very huge in way to communicate with them. Actually, our research came, as much as the customers is bigger, the need is smaller. So we're an installation company. We're supplying product, we're installing it, we're doing design and everything. And I had a dream 2 years ago that I mentioned to my past partner, my ex-partner. I said, you know what, my dream one day to stay in this business, but not to have a technicians. You're like, Andre, you're crazy. How? Like, this is what we sell. So 2 years after, we don't have technicians anymore. We don't have even tools related to our name anymore. Because what we did, I helped our technicians to open their own companies and to work with us as contractors. And what I did, I actually took all the liabilities that we had as a company. What can happen that can actually, it's a liability for our revenue. If there is a flat tire, it's a liability. Okay, how do I get rid of the cars? If someone is sick, now it's delaying. Okay, how I eliminate that I don't have technicians. And I found out that actually, if I'm spending more money paying the contractors, so I took employees that make X, made them to be contractors that make Y now, I make more money. The company is making much more money. But I also don't have to deal with the stuff that I had to deal before because I have a small staff. And in that way, we start layering and going over to every category of clients. We had customers that gave us crazy amount of work. But when you're actually looking at the micro on this customer, they were not very profitable. Because specific clients, we had to have a full support team just to answer their calls. But when we're working with the bigger customers, there's not even expectation to have support because they are called a manufacturer. So we really took everything and we layer it layer by layer and say, okay, this is what, and we start cutting stuff. And we went from even office spaces, like we closed most of our offices. We don't need it because it doesn't make. There's no need to have a physical office. We still have one, but not as big as we had before. That we had 3 different offices. Now we have one, and it's all kind of again layer by layer. So it's not all when was saved or cut because of AI automation, but in the process to implement it, we had to do a really case study about the business and actually understand every micro of the business and audit every one of our customers. And also measuring every customer, who is a customer is going to repeat our business that is worth the investment, because a new customer, you have the cost per lead that you generate the lead, and then you have the overhead, and then you're doing the job. So technically you make more money on the second purchase. So statistically, which customer is going to come back again? On what type of products? Before that, we had many more products we actually offered, and we start cutting off products that we just saw that this product need more service, this product has problem with suppliers, this product has that. We went extremely deep dive on each one of them, and we're even now every quarter, what we do, we go back to all the project we did in the last quarter, and we're re-engineering the projects. What we did wrong, who was the problem. A lot of the issues usually on a project is because of me. I'm the biggest problem, that I get involved where I shouldn't. And we're going back and microing, and then we're going to also see patterns on stuff, and that pattern saying, all right, I can automate that one, so let's take it. And if we eliminate this one we don't need. So the goal is not to duplicate a broken operation. It's to actually, first of all, check your operation, check everything that you want, and start doing step by step. Automating is in the end, because when we start implementing, the goal was to take every 3 clicks and make it 1 click. And then we saw it's working fine, everything good. Okay, now let's make every 5 click, 1 click. Now we're every 20 clicks, 1 click. So, and that way you can calculate the time of the ROI of that automation, because we see how much time we have to spend to do that click and how much is going to cost per the year and how long will cost us to do that automation from development. And our goal always, we have to get paid in a year back on that automation. If we cannot get back in the year, we know that, again, technology is going to be already farther. We most likely already going to change something. We don't touch it, leave it as is, or fully cut it off from the business. So we're it's taught us how to be lean to the extreme and kind of micromanage how we're doing stuff. But it's also created that my team now understand our business extremely. That before that, I'm ashamed to say it, but a lot of my employees back then, my team, didn't really understand what we're doing. They understand their task, but they understand what they're doing. Now, if you don't understand what we do, you cannot be part of the team.
So much to unpack there as well. But I think when we look at automations, that's sort of where Heritage Digital started as well. And a lot of automation, when we say automations as an umbrella term, a lot of businesses or a lot of people don't really understand what that really means. So I think you broke it down really succinctly in a way where we look at small finite details like clicks, right? Like that's a measurable, a tangible metric to measure. So if we're looking at reducing 20 clicks down to 1 click, out of curiosity, this is definitely one, not part of my questions, but a curiosity standpoint, how much time did that save from reducing 20 clicks to one?
So on creating a proposal, that is a good example of 20 clicks. We reduce the average time of creating a proposal from 15 minutes to 3 minutes, bring us back a year saving of $35,000 a year. And it cost me the automation $5,000.
Oh, I like that.
No
I like
brainer automation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think with the way that our brains work also is we put a lot of situations in a no-brainer situation, right? Because we are most likely going to ask those questions to that situation before we even present that to customers. So we already know, okay, well, is why would you say no? So that makes total sense to me. That's a really interesting. And I think what I really love about your approach is you actually look at the analytical side of it, not just go 100 miles an hour and not look at what does that actually commercially make sense or what is the trade-off by implementing, right? Because if that automation ended up costing you 20,000, then it's a kind of a different story because you're only saving 5,000 annually, right? So not many people actually take the time and look at those small metrics. And that's what really automations really do resolve is just those small things between processes over time, and it compounds over time. Because once you start looking at proposal, reduction of time doing spent on proposal, then you start looking at follow-ups, then you start looking at nurture and lead nurturing systems. And it's not only because when we look at saving businesses time or creating them more money, most of the time it's actually a combination of both of them is the ideal, right? That's the no-brainer situation. So when you actually look at those analytics within your business and then trade off putting yourself in a no-brainer situation, it just makes sense commercially from a business perspective, right?
Exactly. And again, time is the biggest thing. For me, it's all about saving time, as the time is the only thing you cannot buy. So how you can saving time, but not replacing that time to something else. It's how you saving that time in way to allow, again, time that is a multi-use. So for example, it's my goal, for example, as a company before that, when we actually provide more service and everything, the guys outside 8, 9, 10 o'clock, even sometimes 1 o'clock at night. But now we're 8 to 5. And then the weekend. Yes, we did a lot of work and everything. Again, we were doing an average 1,000 jobs a year. But statistically, I was not able to sustain good technicians over 4 or 5 years. They will get burned out.
Yeah.
So I'm staying with the same issues over and over. So some people say, okay, he's not as angry anymore, so now he's creating more structure. No, I'm creating sensibility for my team. And now in that process, before that, they have to kind of take pictures and write the reports after the jobs and everything. Now they can make a phone call and they can speak with an AI operator and tell them what they did on the job, and she'll do it to them on their way back home. So the biggest trade-off that was made, it's time, not for the company, for the technicians with his family back then, in way to kind of give them a more quality of life, let's call it, of the way they work, because nobody liked paperwork, right? And if you are like me, I got help if you have to read my handwrite. So it's even making stuff harder, and then making the operator to call the technician and say, "Hey, read it to me what you said over here," or "I didn't understand. We forgot to attach this one. I didn't fill that one." But to have a 5 minutes conversation, you can fill 10 pages in 5 minutes conversation.
Yeah. That's really clever, particularly when it comes down to technicians. Because when I think of technicians, I think of people who don't really want to do paperwork, like you said. But additionally, they're not going to fill it out because they've just done a hard day, right, of installations and supplying. So that's the last thing that they want to do, but it's a necessary component of business. And that filters out to other trades as well, not just technicians. It filters out, again, taking a small scenario, but actually changing the way that it works. So you're still completing the task in a short amount of time because I agree with you. time is the highest value, is the most valued currency, but you can't buy it, right? So you can't buy it. So you just got to do more.
You cannot do it. But again, if you think about most service company, the way they'll do automations for technician, they'll give him a tablet with an online form, go and fill it in order to eliminate the paperwork. You're not eliminating paperwork. You're just changing the way you fill it. This is not automation. Now they have another responsibility to charge a tablet and not to break it. And a liability for the company that nobody will steal it. You didn't
And not
create
to lose
automation,
it.
you created a liability.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people mistake digitalization for automation because when we're talking using that tablet example, that automation would be great for the people in the office, really, right? Because they get that data live rather than that person going scan the document and then send it back, da 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 da. But the people in the office are not in the field, so they don't really need that time saving. Now, we spoke about implementation, especially in larger organizations, starting with something as simple as note takers. But what's your current focus with UTS right now in terms of scaling and that approach? What's the next chapter for UTS?
So from an automation and AI, again, we're in the construction field. So we're building a lot of bots that pretty much taking the whole work of estimating jobs, designing, taking off of like a blueprint of the drawings and pulling all the items, all the small marks, and then identifying them and counting everything. We're playing around with actually tools that will replace using AutoCAD for actually creating drawings and markups for clients. That what is allowing us to, instead of focusing on the physical work, because construction is very old school, extremely. Like the two main product you use is AutoCAD and Excel. Like if you have both of them, you're like the extreme of technology. So we work a bit differently in way to create a lot of statistics, a lot of funneling, a lot of to know how to get, because we're in a very specific area in construction. It's really hard to hire people with that experience. So we're eliminating that uniqueness that needed by adding the layers of AI to help the employees how to do it, to in way to get the right people that we want. And also our process, usually one comment about kind of the flow that you mentioned between department. Usually when but companies create automations, they're focusing based on departments. So let's do one for sales, one for operations, one for accounting, one for the warehouse. And then there is like a rivalry between that departments all the time. So it's like, all right, these the sales guys, they just sell it, they don't care about the job, and they give us not complete product. That is exactly my focus. The flow started from a lead to an invoice, and it's all connected as one flow. It's not separate automation, it's a one flow. And the information that operation need from sales cannot check off before it's moving. And if something coming back, it's moving back automatically. So it's also keeping accountability. And we also built a bonus system based on it. So it's all based on working as a team together. So if sales did a great job and the operation didn't do a good job, it's affecting the bonus for sales and vice versa. So it's forcing them to work together. So because we're working on that one, again, we are focusing in our area of design, that is the low voltage design, anywhere from the actual cables in the building all the way to the softwares, that the integrations. And right now we're kind of all over Canada and a little 2 states in the US. In the summer, we're kind of fully launching on US wide. And our goal from there is to keep going to other countries, because the process we
Australia?
built, actually, Australia, we actually work with a lot of companies in New Zealand and Australia. You'll be surprised. A lot of our manufacturers are over there. And we want to go kind of, to be honest, the only limitation we have currently with working with other countries is only time zone, because we're kind of more around the Eastern, but we're kind of looking to start to going, because we created a team, and with our system, we can work anywhere. Like we can pretty much work anywhere in the world. And right now it's the only limitation is time zones and language. And even that there is a solution for it, but we're taking it a bit slowly, because again, it's really exciting. And again, to stack tasks that took us 4 or 5 days to complete, that you're reducing it to 20 minutes. This is crazy.
It's crazy, but Like you said as well, there is plenty of businesses in Australia, ANZ, especially APAC as well. Actually, is Asia would be a pretty significant pond for you to explore, because obviously that's where a lot of the manufacturers and constructions and wholesaler is.
One of the board of directors in New Zealand of one of our manufacturers. No, I'm supposed to come for a visit next year.
He said that though, right? He said, check out APAC because you would have a lot. And with APAC, you just need one client and then they will basically, that the doors open, especially in this sort of region. So, side note we'll table that for later. But
Yeah.
one last question before we wrap up, Andre, is now you've lost millions in trial and error. You briefly mentioned it before, and you said you don't think twice about it. And a lot of founders carry those failures like heavy weight. But you seem to carry it more like a data. You sort of use that as an analysis tool. But what's the mindset shift that got you there? And what would you say to a founder right now who's mid loss and sort of questioning everything that they've put onto the table thus far?
So, as a person that spent a lot of money on our ERP, actually, I read an article last weekend that's saying that a company that spent millions of dollars on an ERP, 18-year-old can create a cloud over the weekend. And I find myself to be between that 18-year-old to that company that spent millions on an ERP. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm actually disconnecting stuff from our ERP now in a way to allow AI to work better, more freely in our ecosystem. But what I will tell them is, first of all, in the world today, again, I call it the technology revolution. We're in the technology revolution right now. It's the same thing that happened with manufacturing revolutions back in the 20s. We're in the technology revolution right now. And I'll recommend them to focus mostly on their structure. Again, there is no reason to rush on implementations and automations. It's more about structure and lean businesses. This is kind of the way of the future. Secondly, be grateful for everything every hit you got around the way, because this is the way we learn. We learn just getting burned for stuff. So I'm super grateful for any person that stole from me, any mistake that I did, and everything. This is creating your character. And again, I'm extremely great. Like people that I know, employees that stole from me and stuff, everything. Any person I'll see in the street right now, I'll hug him and say thank you because he helped me to build myself forward. And again, I have no hate and nothing for all of them, including all the developers they gave up on me. Because if they didn't, I didn't know what I know today. So I'm extremely grateful. So just be grateful.
Bottom line, be grateful. Andre, this has been generally a really great conversation. And I feel like if we had the time, we would probably talk for 5 hours straight. So luckily we have guardrails in place, but the way that you think about business, about knowing your own operating system and then leaning into it rather than fighting it, it's kind of a perspective I think a lot of founders need to hear right now. So thank you for bringing a whole new self and a whole new perspective to this podcast. But for everyone listening, if you want to connect with Andre or explore what UTS Group is doing and what they're building, all the links will be in the show notes below. In the meantime, keep building meaningfully. But thank you for joining us today, Andre.
Thank you very much for the invite. It was a pleasure.